Okay, so in this continuation of this Python series, today we're going to be learning a very crucial part of Python, functions. So up to this point, you know about different variable types, maybe conditional statements, mathematical operators, that kind of stuff. Well, let's say, for example, we want to print, and my computer's being okay. Let's say we want to print hello, and then someone's name. Hello, Bob. Okay, great. We can run that. And we get hello, Bob. Awesome. Now let's say we can also print the same way. We can print hello world. Okay. That prints hello world. Now, let's say we want to create statements like this, only that are reusable and that can be called multiple times instead of just having to say every time we want to print hello Bob, print hello Bob. Let's say Bob changes his name. We can't say hello Bob anymore. We'd have to adapt to that. So with these we can create reusable blocks of code called functions. So let's do that. So how all functions start is with the def keyword, which I guess stands for probably defining. And then you can pass then you have a name for the function, and we'll call our function hello. And this would be where you would pass parameters to your function. But right now, we're not going to give it a value. And then we can just say print hello. Now, when we run this code, we're going to notice, nothing happens. Well, why is that? It's because we have to call our function. So the way we can call our function is by just saying hello, which is the name of our function, and then the parentheses. And if we had a parameter, which would be right here, passed to our function, then when we called our function, we'd give it an argument. But right now, we don't have any parameters, so we're just gonna... Okay, it called our hello function, which printed hello. Okay, so but the cool thing about this is every time we want to print the word hello, we can just keep on calling this function. See? And now it prints the word hello twice. So maybe let's do a more difficult example this time. So up here we printed hello Bob and hello world. So now we want to print hello and a name. Now how exactly can we do that? So we want to say def, and how about we call this function hello name, because we don't want to name two functions the same thing, and this is more of a descriptive title. And then what we can do is we can pass the word name to our function as a parameter. And then what we can do is we can print hello, if I can spell, plus our value name. So now when we call our function, we have to we pass our function an argument. So when you're calling a function, it's called what goes into this parentheses is called an argument. But when you're defining a function, what goes into the parentheses is called a parameter. Now, a lot of people use these terms simultaneously, but that's not really correct. So where it says hello, we're going to want to pass the word, or we're going to just want to pass a name. So we can pass Bob. And I think that's right. Oh yeah, it gives us I said hello name, my bad. And that gave us an error because, again, that's what happens. I gave that to the function where it wasn't defined. Oh yeah, it says Bob. Okay, this needs to be a string. Okay, and now it says hello plus name, which is hello Bob. So the reason I did the first time what happened was I wasn't reading what I typed and I put hello and since this function didn't have any parameters, that's what happened. And this needs to be a string, then there needs to be a string. Okay, so can we do something similar with numbers? Like, okay, let's say we want to add 2 plus 2. Only maybe next time we want to add 2 plus 3, 2 plus 4, 2 plus 5, and then so on and so forth. So we can do that. We can do math in functions too. So let's say we want to create a function called add2, right? And every time the function adds 2. So we'll have it take a number. And I just called it num, short for number. So let's say we want to print the value of 2 plus num, and then in add2 we will pass it a number. So let's pass it 3. So it should print 2 plus 3, which is 5. So we can use the print statement to print out our result. Now we can do something else if we're adding numbers. We can also use this thing called a return statement. So how the return statement works is, let's say we're going to add 3 this time. We'll call it num. We'll have it taken a num again. And let's say we want to return 3 plus num. So what happens when the return is called is it basically ends a function, but let's see. Oh, I forgot to call that function, my bad. So okay, let's say add 3, and we'll call 3 again. Well, since what the return function does is it just returns a value. We're not printing anything. So if we want to actually display our value, then we'd have to use print. So if I change this back into print, then it gives us 6. Now, what return is doing is it's returning something as an integer, while what the print statement is doing is it's just printing something as a string. Okay, so now we have some basic functions. So for a challenge, let's do something a little bit more difficult, I guess. So let's create a function to test if a number is odd or even. And we can call it def, or we'll start with defining, and we'll just call it is even, and we'll have it take in a num. So we can use this thing called a modulus operator, which what it does is it returns the remainder of a number. And what I mean by that, I guess I'll show you what I mean by that. So what we can say is if num module 2 equals 0. So I did not get that. Okay, and I also needed my if. My bad. Okay, so what this is saying is if a number divided by 2 equals 0. So what the modulus is doing is getting the remainder. So if the remainder is equal to 0, then we can say print number. Oh, I forgot quotation marks. So we'll say number is even. And then we can say else print number is odd. And we'll call this function, and why don't we start with we'll give it 4. And it says 4 is even. Now let's try again, only let's give it the number 3. 3 is odd. Okay, so basically what this is doing is, I think I already said, but any even number divided by 2, the remainder is 0. So then it prints the numbers even. Well, if it's not an even number, then it has to be an odd number. So it prints that the number is odd. Okay, so just to recap, we learned about these really cool reusable blocks of code called functions.